Hi, this is Jenny Lesage. I'm the Director of Special Education at Radnor Township School District.
And George Regal, the Assistant Director of Special Education in Radnor.
And George and I made a determination that we thought it would be a good idea to be able to get a lot of information out to our parents. So we decided to put a very brief webinar together, just basically about the COVID crisis that we find ourselves in. So we'll put that PowerPoint up now. So again, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar regarding the COVID-19 pandemic and the effects on special education in Pennsylvania, but more specifically in Radnor Township School District. Our overarching objective is to inform all of our families of the impact of Governor Wolf's unprecedented closure of our school buildings in light of the emergency medical issues that the COVID-19 virus and this closure's impact on the delivery of special education services and programming at Radnor Township School District. More specifically, during this webinar, we will discuss the planning and preparation that occurred and continues to occur during the evolving situation we find ourselves. As our circumstances continue to evolve, decisions occur, and we wanted to provide the context for our choices. The Pennsylvania Department of Education mandated that all school districts provide a continuum of education plan for all students within the district. The Office of Special Education in Radnor worked collaboratively with the Secondary and Elementary Department of Teaching and Learning to write that document and provide it to PDE. We then had to determine individualized emergency plans for students who have individual education plans. Also within that mandate came the writing and passing of the School Bill 751. There are many misconceptions regarding that bill, and later within this webinar, we will address those. Finally, we will end with the most commonly asked questions related to this closure and delivery of special education services in Radnor Township School District. George?
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you everyone for joining or watching this webinar regarding, like Jenny said, our efforts, during this COVID-19 pandemic and our closure. As Jenny mentioned, we are working really hard to provide timely information to our staff, parents, and community. And as we begin to go through this PowerPoint, we really appreciate your understanding with every step that we've taken so far. So here's a brief overview and timeline of what we have done so far. And this doesn't capture all of what the district has provided in terms of professional development and some other things that we've done across our buildings, K-5, as we're working at home. But hopefully it provides some context in some of the decision-making that we have made during this time. So you'll see back in February when news started to break regarding the pandemic, we really started having conversations, not just in our department, but across many departments and with the principals and buildings, respective buildings, knowing that there was a possibility of closure. As we moved down then into March is when we started getting some of our, Governor Wolf started making some of those announcements about schools being closed, starting with Montgomery County, and then of course that day after when he closed all of the schools in Pennsylvania for that 2-week period. That very week, Jenny and I started planning regarding the special education department and what instruction could look like during the 2-week time. While it wasn't necessary for us to do so, we did feel in support with the teaching and learning department and Ken Batchelor, superintendent, that we were going to provide some instruction during those first 2 weeks. That then evolved the next week into that information sharing, starting with the families, parents, coming from ourselves as a department as well as the case managers. And that really dove deep into the virtual learning aspects of the instruction. March 19th is when the instruction actually began in Radnor for all of our students, including the special education students. And then that continued into that following week. On March 25th is actually when the Senate bill was passed, which is now an Act 13. And the 27th is when Governor Wolf announced that we'd be closed indefinitely. So for those first 3 weeks, that first 3-week period, we really dove deep into planning for our special education students across the 5 buildings. March 20th to 27th is when those interim COVID planning and rollout began. Jenny and I worked very collaboratively on this, taking a close look at Senate Bill 751 and our requirements, and then also what we could do in terms of that continuity of education within the district. And we planned really during that week in conjunction with the other departments and the building principals to start rolling those plans out. You started receiving those plans that following week. And that following week was also spring break, and that's when we got the announcement that school would be closed until the end of the school year. For us, that would be, I believe, June 12th. During that time, the instruction still continued, and those interim plans were due to the parents. You should have received a copy by April 15th. So up until then, we've really done a lot of planning in terms of special education instruction for our students. And also keeping in mind our students with 504s, GIEPs as well. The next slide goes into some of that ongoing support and information sharing that we've continued to provide, not just for our staff, but also for the parents and community alike. So the first part is really for our staff. And just as an FYI, this PowerPoint will be made available for you. So there's some links in a couple of these slides. We will not open them during this during the webinar, excuse me, but you can click on each one, and you also should have received those in your email as we continue to provide communication. The staff has attended weekly Zoom department meetings with Jenny and I. And during those weekly meetings, of course, with this evolving pandemic and the frequent changes we've encountered, we provided those timely updates to all of our staff during those weekly department meetings. In terms of mental health, we've also met weekly with some of our mental health providers. That will be our social workers, the psychologists, the Lakeside clinical support counselors, as well as our Caring Foundation liaison. And we meet weekly to discuss some of those ongoing needs, and we'll get into that later in the slides. But some of those mental health needs, pressing mental health needs as we navigate this new platform and working from home. The psychologists meet then in a separate meeting with us weekly, and Jenny will get into next some of those timeline requirements, but making sure that we support them in their efforts to maintain those evaluation and reevaluation timelines. And then, of course, we continue to receive updates from both the state and federal government in conjunction with other districts and directors in the area as we continue to have those weekly Zoom meetings to talk about compliance, some of those guidelines that have been put out, and really working collaboratively with our surrounding districts. In terms of parent newsletters, communications, and ongoing support that we provided, as I said, you can click on each of those when you open the PowerPoint, but so far we have sent 2 newsletters to our parents. We will send those out weekly and continue to do so. And those newsletters really are both information for you to hopefully clarify some things, as well as the second page always includes some fun ideas and things you can do with your students at home or your children at home, and also resources if you need help navigating mental health resources, teaching resources, since you're essentially teaching at home as well. But that second page will provide a lot of links to some of those supports that you can use. The communications have also come from case managers as well as the department through our communication department. And that started with that initial letter from Jenny and I. A sample letter we gave to our case managers, which you received that first week, basically outlining what the instruction would look like. And then, of course, most recently, the COVID plan, which we'll get into, and also that addendum, which Jenny will speak on a couple slides from now. We will continue to provide that ongoing weekly communication via us, as well as the case managers, and that'll be through one of those platforms, either through Schoology, Big Blue Button, email, or phone, one of those types of communications. So we'll continue to update you regularly as things change and throughout the end of the year. Jenny?
Thank you, George. Okay, so this slide really has to do with looking at the closure, the physical closure of our schools. Pennsylvania Department of Education and the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation really did not give us any reprieve or allowances regarding special education timelines. This includes reevaluations. As it stands now, all reevaluations are still due within their timelines, whether it be their biannual or triannual date. This is very important as we move forward. You will still see these reports coming for your student, your child, if it is due at this time. Within our documents, within these reevaluations, we have placed a statement. It's kind of lengthy. It's actually a part of this particular slide if you click on it. And it just basically goes into exactly what took place, starting all the way back in January 30th and going up into the fact that at this point we are physically closed as a district through the end of the school year. Therefore, we cannot offer any students standardized testing that typically is done within some of our reevaluations and obviously our initial evaluations. So that statement is put in there, and we will be looking to reissue permissions to either evaluate or reevaluate in a time and manner that will be determined after schools are fully reopened by Governor Wolf and operational. So there will be no testing that is able to be done in this time period when we are not together and not being able to be physically around each other's, because that is how we conduct our standardized testing. So as a district, we are also continuing to follow the mandated annual meetings for IEPs, GIEPs, and 504 plans. We are holding these in the form of Zoom or conference calls with all the appropriate team members that are available. These documents will be discussed during these meetings and only finalized after the team meets and has a discussion. And then we will be issuing we call them NOREPs, our Notice of Recommended Educational Placements, and our Notice of Recommended Assignment, a NORA, in the case of a GIEP, or we will be sending out finalized 504 plans. These will be issued via email from your child's case manager. These IEPs will be in place and fully implemented upon Governor Wolf determining that we are open and fully operational back in our school buildings. So the next slide. This is a slide that is basically about oh, I'm sorry. This is George's slide.
That is quite all right. We are a team. So yes, so I will get into this slide now, and this is regarding the levels of support based on student need that we continue to provide. So this is just a broad overview of supports that have been in place when we are in person, when schools are fully operational, but supports that Jenny and I have continued to support our staff in providing during this closure. And a lot of these services, as we will discuss, if your child received it in the school during the school time that we were open in person, a lot of those services were written into the interim plans. Mental health, we did send out a communication on mental health, and it's also posted on our website. And there's a link in this PowerPoint, the first link there, which goes over a lot of the mental health supports that we're providing both in district, but also resources for you to utilize as a family or for your child if they are struggling outside. And a lot of those providers are offering teletherapy, and that is listed. Our social workers put together a list for us and reaching out to many of those providers. So all of those resources are provided on the Radnor Township School District website under the COVID-19 pandemic link, and that link specifically is for mental health. As we go down, I won't go over in detail, you can read through, but our social workers continue to provide support for our families, food, direct mental health support. We provided internet access for students who didn't have it, and of course that provider information. Our emotional and behavioral support staff continue to provide consultation for our staff and parents, as well as some direct instruction via the virtual methods that have been rolled out. That is continuing to occur, and that includes some of the positive action curriculum we've used, some of the social skills curriculum, things like that. Our clinical support counselors actually jumped in week 1 along with our teachers and started offering teletherapy. Lakeside specifically started, and we just got approved the Caron Foundation provider to also continue to provide that support. And that is one-on-one teletherapy, and also they're beginning to use virtual methods as well as we begin to continue to roll that out. Our inclusion coach resources are available to all of our teachers to support modifying work as needed. As she continued to support us both in person, she is now supporting us virtually as well. Special education teachers, really all levels, but primarily that itinerant and supplemental level. All of our special education teachers have been trained on that Schoology platform, and most recently the Big Blue Button. And they are providing in the COVID interim plans, which we will go over. It is written in there what services they're providing during this mandated closure. And also, of course, the access to those online programs that we're utilizing while in school, such as iRead, Read 180, System 44, and Math 180. Gifted education teachers will continue to have continued to support our not just our gifted learners, but also students who are accelerated, working primarily with the regular education teacher in providing both extension opportunities as well as that accelerated material if they received it before. 504 agreements, the case managers continue to oversee those accommodations. They're working directly with the regular education teachers to support that instruction to the best of their ability and following those 504 agreements. And that's just a snapshot of what we have provided thus far. The next slide is also mine, and it goes a little more, it goes a little deeper into that mental health support that has been provided and will continue to be provided. We do realize that this is a really, truly unprecedented time for all of us, and that students may be struggling a little more than they even did when they were in person. And also our staff isn't seeing them necessarily, well, not seeing face-to-face, but not seeing them as much as they would when they were in front of us. So we want to be prioritizing and we'll continue to prioritize the mental health needs of our families and students. And this just goes into some of that additional support that we continue to provide and will continue to provide. And again, that link is provided there that was mentioned on the earlier slide. And I would encourage you, if you need support or guidance, to click on that link on the website or in this PowerPoint. But parent information, we will continue to post and update that information on the website. As we mentioned, the emotional support teachers are continuing to teach there and implement their curriculum, positive action, as well as other resources. The clinical support counselors, Lakeside, began week 1, as I mentioned, and they will be providing additional support to students if needed, case-by-case basis. And that'll be through the school building teams, guidance counselors, as well as our case managers. Our school counselors continue to support students virtually as well, supporting those transitions that are coming up. And we'll get into that in just a couple slides. The course selection process, of course, that Act 339 activities, attendance, and much, much more. They do so much for our students. The social workers, we can't begin to tell you how much they've done and continue to do. They've really been a front line for us, and we appreciate all they've done. But as we mentioned, that food support, mental health resources, welfare issues, technology, and so much more. Caron Foundation, we just did get approved this past week. They will continue to support the ongoing SAP process, and that will be done virtually. Information was provided to the buildings, and they'll be rolling that out sometime this week. I know they've already had meetings at the secondary level, both the middle school and the high school, but that'll continue to expand now that Caron Foundation has put out new guidelines for us. The DCIU, we had a consultant and continue to consult with her for our risk assessment process, which was put in place this year. And we will be relying on her as a consultant ongoing throughout the end of this school year. And then again, there's other resources we'll continue to provide via those newsletters and posted on the website. I believe they're also, if they aren't already, they will be posted by the time you're watching this on our special education page on the Radnor Township School District website. All right, Jenny?
Thank you, George. So the next 2 slides really have a lot to do with School Bill 751 and how it impacted what we're doing at Radnor and what all of the schools throughout Pennsylvania are doing in providing students with this new online instruction. So they voted for this to pass. And basically the most important piece that came out of this is we needed to, as a district, come up with and offer a form of alternate education during this closure and provide the parents a notice of this plan. Our plan was written in collaboration with the Office of Teaching and Learning and the Department of Technology, just to name two. There are 4 phases to this plan. There's preparation, implementation and expansion, development, enhancement and adaptation, and finally, refinement. This plan is going to be what we've done so far and will continue to do as we move through the remaining months of this school year, providing students an education. But one of the things it really did was it started us thinking, and it has a piece in there about what we're going to do with students that have IEPs, students that have documents that we had all agreed upon before the closing, and what their education would look like as we're going into a closure, a physical closure of all buildings. So the next slide. So prior to this bill passing, George and I actually realized that we were going to need to offer our parents complete transparency on the different programming and strategies and expectation that students would be provided during this sudden school closure. We asked our teachers to look at students' IEPs, and we looked at how we would be determining to meet student needs in a virtual mode and how that would work. Our special education teachers were charged with envisioning this new world and writing these COVID plans. These plans consisted of areas of instruction to be addressed during our building's closure, as well as the specially designed instruction that their students would most likely require to access this new online virtual learning. We dubbed this plan the COVID-19 Interim Individualized Emergency Special Education Plan. It really is every single piece of that. We determined that these plans would be shared with our families in a timely manner, and also with the other staff members that work with the students, meaning other teachers, not just the special ed teachers. We did it via email from each student's case manager. Keep in mind that this was simultaneously occurring as our special education teachers were being provided professional development in the areas of technology, as well as asynchronous and synchronous teaching strategies. So at the very least, we need to understand that in all of these things, all of these moving parts were occurring, and we wanted to make sure that these plans came out to our families so that they had a chance to look at them. And we are continuing to reiterate and involve our parents at the end of a week, asking how are things going, and trying to have that continual communication to see if these plans need some adjustment as we move forward. There's one other thing that we really want to talk about. At the bottom of the plan that was originally sent to everyone, we had placed a FERPA statement based off of this new phenomena called Zoom bombing. We wanted our parents to be aware of the possibility that their child's personal information could be violated by utilizing this platform. Then, over the course of the following week, the Office of Teaching and Learning worked collaboratively with the technology department and uncovered a platform called Big Blue Button. This platform was very safe. It was a very safe way for all of our teachers to provide synchronous and asynchronous learning opportunities for our students. Due to our newly determined platform, we were able to send out the addendum to our COVID-19 plans, and we sent that last Thursday along with our weekly newsletter as an update to all of our families and letting them know that we do not see the Big Blue Button as any way getting any kind of problems related to FERPA violations. So moving forward and forever and always changing, you're going to see your child's plan possibly change as these weeks continue on until the end of this school year.
Thank you, Jenny. So last couple slides before we wrap up with some questions and answers. A lot of questions have come in regarding transitions and what transitions may look like for students. And we know that a lot of our students are transitioning from, or fifth graders are transitioning to sixth grade and our eighth to ninth grade. We have planned, and information will be forthcoming to all parents, case managers first, but we have planned to hold virtual transition meetings for all of our students moving from fifth to sixth, and then also from eighth to ninth. Please know that the school counselors are already working on course selections. Information will be forthcoming if you haven't gotten it already. Those processes just look a little different now that we're working virtually. So more information will come regarding transition meetings, but please know that Jenny and I are planning along with our case managers for those to occur at the end of this school year. And that'll be late May or early June. Early intervention, some questions have come in regarding early intervention students. So we have worked with our psychologists already, and we'll continue to communicate with them for all of those families that have already registered and that possibly we started the evaluation, much like our in-district students now, but started that evaluation before the forced closure. It'll run similarly to what we're doing now, finishing those reports with that COVID language that Jenny went over. But more information will go out to those parents, early intervention parents, who have their students transitioning into kindergarten with us next year. Graduating senior process, we are sad that we won't have as a normal graduation, and we do wish all of our seniors luck, but good luck. Our case managers working with seniors will do the same process they've done in the past, again, just working virtually, conducting meetings if needed, but most importantly, getting those graduation NORPs completed and those summary of academic performance. So please look for that information from the case manager directly as you normally would have received. Just know that, of course, it is happening virtually. So to wrap us up, we had some questions that came in from multiple families and also from case managers, our case managers. And we wanted to clarify and answer those questions as a group on this webinar. So I'll take the first two and then Jenny will chime in on the second two, but these are four main questions that we've received and information that we will provide now is the most up-to-date information we have. The first question is ESY, extended school year, still occurring? Yes, it is still occurring. At this time, we are planning, Jen and I are planning for both an in-person and a virtual ESY program, as we have not had any guidance to date from Governor Wolf on what that would look like if we are open, and of course, if not, what that could look like virtually. When we do receive that guidance, please know that we will solidify our plans and share that with the families of students who already qualified for ESY in a timely manner. The second question, how are students being progress monitored? While schools remain closed, formal goal-related progress, as Jenny went over in that COVID plan and as you've already received, that formal goal-related progress monitoring is outlined in the IEP just cannot occur. We're using, of course, different methods as we navigate this new arena. Case managers may utilize those built-in program progress data, and that is what I mentioned earlier, some of those programs, including iRead, System 44, Read 180, Math 180. And that's just really to gauge their progress on those platforms and also to plan instruction. Jenny?
Thank you, George. So who do I contact if I have a concern about my child's interim plan? You can really contact anyone, but we really strongly suggest that you continue to work collaboratively with the case managers that are involved with your children. Continue to communicate with them. They are continuing to communicate with you weekly. This will help you understand why we're doing what we're doing, and they will be the basis of pretty much every answer. If you communicate with us, please feel free. You can always reach out to George and I, but we would have to contact your case manager anyway. And when you do have a question, if you can be really specific about your questions or your concerns when emailing them, that would really help you get your question answered in a really timely manner. Will the district owe comp ed services to students? At this time, the district has put a lot of effort into the education that we're providing all of our students, regular ed, special ed, everyone. It's been an ongoing, ever-evolving process. we have provided services according to our continuing education plans, our continuum of education plans, as we were asked to by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. So at this point, we really cannot make that determination. But we are forever and continuing to work with our teachers, to work with our paraeducators, and just trying to make sure that we are reaching out and providing the very best education that we can in the circumstances that we have found ourselves in. Okay. So Radnor Responds. This is a piece of what we do here at Radnor. We like to make everyone aware of things that are going on. There are so many people that are on the front lines in Radnor and have been since this all began. And one of the things that we would really like to do, and we've asked our Michael Petiti and Allison Gangle to work with us, to be able to put a bunch of pictures up so everyone can see the people that have been working on the front lines. We have our technology department that has made sure that technology has gotten into the hands of all of our families, have gotten into the hands of our teachers, and they continue to work on any technology issues that we have as we work from home. We also have to really look at the people that have provided our families that have a need for food, with the pickup of the food at the different locations, and being able to provide our families with the needed supplies. We also, again, George had brought this up before, have to talk about all of the people that have reached out and have worked in our community, and two people, being our social workers, have done an amazing job. And these people are working on the front lines directly with our families and our communities. And this brief piece will just have some pictures and be able to let everyone see what is going on and what will continue to go on as we all work on this together. You're on mute, George.
That's what happens learning these new platforms. Thanks, Jenny.
Technology's great.
Oh, it is. So hopefully that gave you not just a broad understanding, but some context into what we have been doing as a department, and really how that bleeds into other departments and working collaboratively with them, and also you at home. We do realize it's truly unprecedented for all of us, but we do appreciate your understanding as we continue to navigate. And hopefully this webinar brought some understanding and context to what we have done. So we thank everyone for joining us. If you do have any questions, feel free to email us. Both of our emails are actually on that first slide. And of course, you can contact us via email since we are working from home. All right, thanks for joining us.
Stay well.